How I finally said no to my family's endless demands. Family drama, Reddit stories. Welcome to Silent Wars, where we dive into the most shocking and emotional family drama Reddit stories. In today's video, we'll explore a gripping tale of sibling rivalry and family conflicts that will make you rethink your own relationships. Stay tuned as we unpack a family drama Reddit story that highlights the complexities and tensions within families. If you enjoy real-life stories that tug at your heartstrings, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more family drama Reddit stories just like this one. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update from Silent Wars. My name is Lucas, and I'm 28 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've always been the one to step up for my family. Whether it was running errands, doing household chores, or fixing things when they broke, it was always expected of me. I didn't mind at first, in fact. It felt like the right thing to do. Helping my family, especially when they needed me the most, made me feel like I was contributing in a meaningful way. But over time, what started as a natural act of caring for my loved ones turned into a constant, unspoken expectation. It wasn't just helping, it became more of an obligation, as if my role in the family was to take care of everyone else's needs while my own were left in the dust. Growing up, I was the one who was always asked to pick up the slack. If something went wrong at home, it was somehow my fault. If Rachel, my older sister, needed something, I was the one who had to drop everything and take care of it. When my brother Mark had a problem, I was the first person he called, even though he often did little to take responsibility for his own messes. I didn't mind. At first, helping out was part of being a family, right? But as I got older, it became clearer that I was the only one expected to always come to the rescue. My sister and brother, while they were busy building their own lives and careers, seemed to think that it was my job to shoulder the burden of family responsibilities. It was as if my needs and desires didn't matter. I recall one particular incident when my dad was going through a health scare. While it wasn't life-threatening, it was serious enough that my mom needed help taking care of him. As expected, she called me first. "Lucas, can you take your dad to his doctor's appointments? You're the best with these things," she said. And so, I did. I took days off from work, drove my dad to his checkups, picked up his prescriptions, and made sure he was comfortable. But my siblings? They showed up maybe once or twice, took a few photos for Facebook to show how family comes first, and left. I remember feeling a surge of resentment as I did all the heavy lifting, thinking to myself, is this really what family is about? After my dad recovered, I thought maybe this time would be different. Maybe they would appreciate the sacrifice I had made. Maybe they'd finally see how much I had done for them. But no. A few months later, Rachel called me with yet another favor. "Hey, I just started this new job, and I can't take time off yet, but Mom needs some stuff done at the house. Can you handle it?" she asked. I was exhausted. I had been running on empty for so long. I had my own life to manage, but I was still expected to be the go-to person for everyone's problems. This time, however, I snapped. For the first time, I said no. "I can't, Rachel. You and Mark need to help Mom now. I have my own life to live." The silence on the phone stretched for what felt like an eternity before she finally responded, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "So, you're seriously going to be selfish now?" Those words struck me hard. Selfish? After years of always putting everyone else first, I was being accused of selfishness for once choosing myself? I hung up the phone and immediately felt a sense of relief. For the first time, I wasn't going to be their safety net. For the first time, I was putting myself first. But it didn't stop there. The texts started rolling in. "You're abandoning your family, Lucas. You're being so unreasonable. How could you turn your back on us?" It was like a floodgate had opened. They didn't understand that I wasn't abandoning them. I was finally drawing a boundary. I was finally saying no. And it felt good, but also terrifying. Would they come around? Or would I lose my family forever? Either way, I knew I had to stick to my decision. I couldn't keep living like this. I had been the one to always sacrifice, and it was time for me to stop. The weight of constantly being expected to care for everyone else had taken its toll on me. And now, as I looked back on all those years of self-sacrifice, I realized that my family's expectations were never about love or care, it was about control. They had come to rely on me, not because they cared, but because it was convenient. But no more. I was ready to stop being their unpaid assistant and start living for myself. And the hardest part? Letting go of the guilt that came with it. It all came to a head one day when my father had a health scare. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was serious enough that he needed help. I was already stretched thin, juggling a demanding job and the everyday pressures of life. But when my mom called, I knew I couldn't say no. She needed me. "Lucas, can you help with Dad's doctor appointments? You're the best at this," she said, her voice filled with worry. As usual, I didn't hesitate. I dropped everything, took time off work, and drove my dad to all his appointments, made sure his prescriptions were filled, and did everything I could to make sure he was comfortable. I didn't mind doing it at first, after all. It was family, and that's what families do, right? But as the days went on, I couldn't help but feel frustrated. My older siblings, Rachel and Mark, barely showed up. They made a couple of appearances, took some pictures for their social media to show they cared, but as soon as the photo op was over, they disappeared. The weight of all the responsibility fell squarely on my shoulders. Once my dad recovered, I thought perhaps naively that maybe this time, just maybe, my family would appreciate the sacrifices I had made. I thought they'd recognize how much I had given up, how much of my own time I had sacrificed. But that never happened. Instead, just a few months later, Rachel called me again. This time, it was another favor, another task that she didn't have the time or energy to handle. "Hey, I can't take time off work. Can you take care of Mom for me?" she asked casually, as if it were just another minor favor. I was already exhausted, emotionally drained from helping everyone else. Yet again. I had been working long hours, managing my own life, trying to keep everything together. I had been the one who had always stepped up when needed, and no one else seemed to even notice how much I was doing. This time, something inside me snapped. For the first time in my life, I said no. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. For a moment, I thought the call had dropped. Then Rachel's voice broke through, harsh and accusatory. "You're really going to be selfish right now?" she snapped, as if the mere thought of me saying no was a betrayal. It hit me like a punch to the gut. All these years of sacrificing my time, my energy, and my own well-being. And now, for once, I needed a break, and she called me selfish. That was the moment everything changed for me. I realized I didn't have to be their backup anymore. I didn't have to be the one who dropped everything every time someone needed something. I didn't have to be their unpaid assistant, the person they could rely on just because I always said yes. I wasn't going to be the one who had to shoulder everyone else's burdens anymore. Saying no for the first time felt like breaking free from a long-held chain. I had been stuck in this cycle of always putting others first, of always being the one to clean up the messes, of always being expected to do more, give more, sacrifice more. I had been so used to saying yes, so used to helping, that I had forgotten what it felt like to take care of myself. But that was over. I didn't expect them to understand right away. I didn't expect Rachel or Mark to suddenly have an epiphany and realize the toll they had taken on me. But in that moment, I felt a sense of relief. a weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove myself to anyone. I didn't have to apologize for saying no. I had every right to take a step back and focus on my own life. This was my turning point the moment I stopped being their go-to person, their safety net, and started living for myself. It wasn't easy. It wasn't without guilt, but it was necessary. It was time to stop saying yes to everyone else and start saying yes to myself. After I said no, everything fell apart. The instant I stopped answering their calls, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, one I hadn't realized was there for so long. No more rushing across town to run errands for Rachel or Mark. No more picking up the pieces of their messes. No more bailing Mark out of his financial disasters when he had overspent again, or taking time off work to take care of things they should have managed themselves. I stopped being the family's backup, and I finally decided to live my life on my terms. At first, no one really noticed. Or at least, they didn't acknowledge it. For weeks, everything seemed normal. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd respect my decision and realize I wasn't always going to be there to pick up the slack. But then, the messages started flooding in. "Hey, can you help with Mom? She needs someone to drive her to the store. Mark's struggling again. Can you give him a hand? He's behind on his rent." The messages were relentless. One after another, my phone buzzed with requests. They all expected me to jump in as if nothing had changed, as if I hadn't made it clear that I was done. At first, I ignored them. I figured if I didn't respond, they'd eventually get the hint. But the guilt trips started coming in, and that's when it all started to feel like an emotional assault. Rachel was the first to hit me with the classic guilt. "You're really going to act like this?" she texted. Her words felt like a slap in the face. She wasn't even asking anymore. She was accusing me of being selfish, accusing me of abandoning my family. Then came my mom. She texted me, saying, "Family takes care of each other, Lucas." Her words burned. I could almost hear the disappointment in her voice. She said it like it was my job to take care of everyone, like I was the only one capable of doing the things they didn't want to do. But what about all the times I had been there for them? Didn't I deserve a little care in return? It was always expected that I would just sacrifice everything for the sake of everyone else, but when I needed help, where were they? I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout at them and say, "I'm not your servant. I'm not your safety net. I am not here just to clean up after you." But I didn't. Instead, I sat with the anger building inside me, feeling the frustration bubble to the surface. They didn't get it. They still didn't understand. They still saw me as the dependable one, the easy choice when they needed help. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized just how one-sided everything had been. For years, I had been the one who was always there, always willing to put my own life on hold for the sake of the family. And in return, all I got were more demands, more expectations, and more guilt trips. It was never enough. Nothing was ever enough for them. I started feeling the resentment I had buried for so long start to rise up. I was the one who always took care of everyone else, but when I needed help, when I needed someone to step up, no one was there. It wasn't just that they didn't notice, I think they took me for granted. They assumed I would always be there to fix their problems because that's what I had always done. I realized then that this wasn't about me being selfish. This was about me finally taking control of my life. It wasn't about turning my back on my family. It was about setting boundaries, about saying, "I deserve to live my life too." But as I continued to ignore their messages, the guilt gnawed at me. I couldn't help but wonder, was I being too harsh? Was I overreacting? Shouldn't family take care of each other, as my mom said? These questions lingered, but I knew deep down that I had made the right choice. I wasn't their personal assistant anymore. I wasn't their emotional punching bag. And if they wanted to keep treating me like the one who was always supposed to be there for them, they were going to have to get used to the new me, the one who was no longer playing the role of the good kid, the one who was finally standing up for himself. I just hoped they would realize it sooner rather than later. It was a typical evening when I received the text that would change everything. Mark got evicted. The message from my mom hit me like a ton of bricks. My stomach dropped. Mark, my older brother, had always been irresponsible with money. He spent without thinking, racking up debt and living beyond his means. And for years, I had been the one to pick up the pieces, loaning him money, bailing him out when things went south, offering my time and energy whenever he made a mess of his life. But this time, I knew things had to be different. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I sat there in silence, processing what this meant for me. The old pattern was so familiar, so comfortable. My family expected me to swoop in, save the day, and fix everything just like I always had. But I couldn't do it anymore. The weight of always being the one to put everything else aside for everyone else was finally starting to break me. I had my own life now, my own struggles, my own ambitions, and I could no longer afford to play the role of the family fixer. As expected, my mom called a few minutes later. She didn't even let me speak before she launched into her tirade. "Mark is in trouble and you're acting like you don't care," she shouted, her voice thick with panic and frustration. I could feel my patience thinning. Every part of me was telling me to just hang up and let them figure this out for themselves, but I held on. "Mark is a grown man, Mom," I said, my voice calm but firm. "He's got himself into this mess and he needs to figure it out. He's not a kid anymore." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I knew she was about to say something that would test me, and sure enough, her next words felt like a punch to the gut. "I need you to take him in." My heart stopped for a moment. I had been dreading those words for so long, and now that they were out in the open, I could finally see the reality of the situation. My mom expected me to open my door, take Mark in, and continue the cycle of rescuing him from his own bad decisions. But this time, I couldn't just say yes. I couldn't continue being the fallback, the safety net for everyone else's mistakes. I had spent years sacrificing my own needs for the sake of my family, only to feel overlooked, unappreciated, and used. This time, I had to stand up for myself. "Number, I'm not taking him in," I said, my voice steady and resolute. "He's got to stand on his own 2 feet." It felt like the first time in years that I had said no, and I immediately felt a sense of freedom that I hadn't experienced in a long time. There was a long pause, and I could hear the disbelief in my mom's voice. "But he's your brother, Lucas," she said softly, as if trying to remind me of some family duty I was supposed to uphold. "Family takes care of each other." I felt a deep breath escape me. That old line. Family takes care of each other. A phrase I had heard so many times, used against me like a weapon to make me feel guilty for setting boundaries. But this time, it didn't have the same power. I wasn't going to let it work on me anymore. "You've always taught me to take care of everyone else," I said, keeping my voice calm but unwavering. "But I've done enough. I can't keep carrying him, carrying all of you." There was no more room for guilt. No more feeling like I had to put everyone else's needs before my own. I wasn't going to let them keep using me as their emotional crutch. With that, the weight that had been suffocating me for years began to lift. For the first time, I felt like I was truly taking control of my life. I wasn't going to be their backup anymore. And as much as my mom's disappointment stung, I knew I was making the right choice. It wasn't easy, but I couldn't allow myself to be sucked back into the cycle of constant sacrifice. It was time to let go. Time to stop saying yes. And for once, I felt like I was free. A few days passed after I had set my boundaries with my family, and I thought the storm had passed. I was finally finding some peace, but of course I should have known it wasn't over. Rachel, my older sister, reached out to me again. Her message was calm, almost too calm, which immediately set off alarms in my mind. "We need to talk, Lucas. It's about Mark." The phrasing felt deliberate, and I could tell that this wasn't just a casual check-in. It was something more. I didn't respond right away. Part of me was hoping that by not engaging, she would eventually get the message that I wasn't going to play along with her manipulations anymore. But curiosity got the better of me, and I replied, "What about Mark?" I could already feel the pressure building in my chest. I knew where this was going, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face it. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a voice message from Rachel. The moment I heard her voice, I could tell she was trying to sound calm, but there was a clear undertone of desperation. "Lucas, I know you're angry, but I need you to listen. Mark, he needs you," she said, her voice shaky as if she were trying to hold back tears. "He doesn't have anywhere else to go. He's really struggling, and you're the only one who can help him." I closed my eyes and let out a slow breath as I listened. There it was, the guilt trip. The same manipulation tactic they always used. She was trying to pull at my heartstrings, but this time, something clicked inside me. I could hear it in her voice, the urgency, the pleading. But I also recognized something more. It wasn't really about Mark. It was about Rachel wanting to avoid the mess she had created. She didn't want to handle the responsibility of helping him. She didn't want to be the one to take on the burden. So, once again, she was turning to me, hoping I would swoop in and fix everything. I could almost hear her thinking, "Lucas is always the one who helps. He always takes care of everything. He won't say no. He'll help us again like he always does." I realized, with a wave of clarity, that Rachel wasn't asking for my help because she genuinely cared about Mark. No, she wanted me to fix the problem so that she didn't have to deal with the fallout. She wanted me to clean up the mess, to carry the weight, just as I had done for years. But not this time. I wasn't going to fall for it anymore. I had spent too many years being their go-to person, always coming to the rescue, always saying yes, even when it meant putting my own needs last. I had allowed myself to be manipulated into thinking it was my responsibility to take care of everyone, even when it meant sacrificing my own peace of mind, my own happiness. But now I had drawn the line, and I wasn't about to erase it just because they were pulling at my emotions. I listened to the message again, but this time, I heard it differently. It was all about control. They wanted me to feel guilty, to feel like I was the bad guy for not helping. They wanted to make me believe that if I didn't step in, I was somehow failing my family. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I wasn't going to allow them to manipulate me into doing something that wasn't right for me. I took a deep breath, put my phone down, and realized that I had to stay strong. Rachel had always known how to get under my skin, to make me feel like I was the one who was wrong. But now, I understood the game. She wasn't worried about Mark. She was worried about herself. She didn't want to deal with the consequences of Mark's actions, so she was trying to make me the one responsible for fixing it. I knew that this wasn't the last time they'd try to pull me back into their chaos, but I also knew that I couldn't go back to being their safety net, their caretaker. I had made the decision to take care of myself for once. This was my life, and I had the right to say no. No more guilt trips, no more being manipulated. It was time for them to handle their own problems and stop expecting me to clean up their messes. I didn't respond to Rachel's message immediately. I needed time to process everything. But one thing was clear, I wasn't falling for it this time. The situation took a drastic turn when I received an email from Rachel one evening. The subject line read, "This is what you don't know." My heart sank before I even opened it, but I clicked on the message anyway, a sense of dread washing over me. As soon as I read the first sentence, everything inside me froze. Mark's not just in trouble because of his choices, Rachel wrote. He's been using drugs for months. I stared at the screen, my mind struggling to process what I was reading. Mark, my brother, the one I'd always tried to help, the one I had always supported, was facing something much darker than I had ever imagined. My emotions exploded all at once: anger, confusion, heartbreak, and a deep sense of betrayal. For years, I had been cleaning up Mark's messes, bailing him out of financial trouble, driving him around when he needed something, doing whatever I could to keep him from facing the consequences of his actions. It all seemed like his laziness, his irresponsibility. But this was a revelation that shook me to my core. Mark's reckless behavior, his constant need for help, his inability to take responsibility for anything. It wasn't just carelessness. It wasn't just selfishness. It was an addiction. As the reality of the situation began to sink in, everything suddenly made sense. The money he wasted, the lies he told, the way he would disappear for days, leaving me scrambling to fix things. It wasn't just bad decisions. He had been hiding this dark secret from me, from everyone, for months. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner, but I was also angry. How could he keep this from me? How could he allow me to think that his problems were just the result of bad choices when, in fact, he was struggling with something far worse? But there was something else, something deeper that I felt rising inside me. Rachel had always been manipulative. She had always known how to push my buttons, how to make me feel guilty, how to make me the family's go-to person for fixing everything. This email, though it revealed the truth, was also an attempt to manipulate me into once again playing the role of the family's savior. She knew exactly how I would react, how I would feel the need to step in and save Mark, to be the one to rescue him from his addiction. But I was done. I had to make a choice. The decision before me was harder than anything I had ever faced. On one hand, I could fall back into my old role, the one where I swoop in, fix the problems, be the responsible one, the one who always sacrifices his own needs for the sake of others. I could rush to Mark's side, offer him the help he needed, and pretend like everything was okay, just like I had always done. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the answer. Mark had to face the consequences of his actions. If I continued to be his crutch, he would never learn. He would never take responsibility for his life, his choices, his addiction. And I was tired of being the one who carried everyone else's burdens, tired of being the one who always stepped in when no one else did. The truth was, I couldn't fix Mark. I couldn't save him from himself. I had tried for years and it hadn't worked. This time, I needed to let him face the reality of his situation, even if it meant he would struggle, even if it meant he might fall even further. It was the only way for him to truly learn to stand on his own 2 feet. I had to draw the line, not just for Mark, but for myself. I couldn't keep sacrificing my own happiness, my own life, just to keep everyone else's together. It was time to let go and let Mark face the consequences. I wasn't going to be the family's savior anymore. The decision was gut-wrenching, but I knew it was the right one. I was tired of being manipulated, tired of being the one who always had to pick up the pieces. It was time for Mark to take responsibility for his own actions, and for me to start taking responsibility for my own life. After everything that had happened, I finally made the decision that had been building up for so long. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I also knew that if I didn't set some boundaries now, I would only continue to let my family walk all over me. I had spent too many years picking up the pieces for everyone else, sacrificing my own happiness and neglecting my own well-being just to be the family's backup plan. That had to stop. When I decided to help Mark, it wasn't going to be like before. I wasn't going to step in and fix everything for him. No more picking up his messes, no more solving his problems, No more jumping in every time he needed something. This time, I was going to do things differently. I was going to help him on my terms. I could no longer be his crutch, but I could still offer the support he needed to take responsibility for himself. The first step was helping him find a rehab center. I knew that this was something Mark needed to do for himself. I made the calls, I researched facilities, and I even drove him to the center the day he checked in. But the most important part of my decision came right after that. As I dropped him off at the door, I didn't go inside. I didn't stay to make sure everything was fine. I didn't try to hold his hand through the process. I let him go. For the first time, I wasn't going to rescue him. I wasn't going to fix everything for him. He had to face this challenge on his own. I won't lie, it was incredibly difficult. Watching Mark walk into the rehab center, knowing that I was leaving him to face the consequences of his actions, was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I still cared for him. I still wanted him to succeed, but I knew deep down that this was something he had to do alone. If I continued to step in every time, he would never learn. This was his fight now, and it was time for him to fight it. The phone calls didn't stop. Rachel kept calling, texting, asking for updates on Mark. She wanted to know how he was doing, as if she had no idea what I was going through. It seemed like she couldn't understand why I wasn't taking care of everything the way I always had. But I wasn't going to cave in this time. I responded, but my answers were short, and I didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing how much it was hurting me. I had made a decision, and I was sticking to it. The hardest part of all this was realizing that I wasn't just helping Mark. I was also learning to help myself. For years, I had taken care of my family without ever questioning why they never took care of me in return. I had always put their needs first, but I was finally starting to recognize that I deserved more. I needed to take responsibility for my own life. I couldn't keep living to please everyone else. Mark needed to take responsibility for himself, just like I had started to take responsibility for my own life. It wasn't about being selfish, it was about self-preservation. I had spent too many years giving without ever receiving, and it had drained me. Now I was setting boundaries. I wasn't going to let anyone, especially Mark, manipulate me into becoming their unpaid therapist, problem solver, or emotional crutch. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. I had finally realized that my worth didn't come from constantly helping others. I didn't need to be their savior anymore. I had to save myself first. I wasn't going to be the one to pick up the pieces for them anymore. It wasn't just about Mark, it was about me reclaiming my life. The calls from Rachel and the messages from my mom kept coming, but I stayed firm. I had made the choice, and I was sticking to it. In the end, I didn't need to rescue anyone but myself. It wasn't about abandoning my family, it was about taking care of myself for the first time in my life. And that, I realized, was the most important thing I could do. Over the following months, I began to notice a subtle but significant change in Mark. It wasn't sudden, and it certainly wasn't perfect, but there was something different about him. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of responsibility, a flicker of maturity. It wasn't about him suddenly becoming a perfect person overnight, nor was it about him becoming the person I had always hoped he would be. But there was a shift. He was trying. And that, for the first time in my life, felt like enough. Mark had spent so many years relying on me. I had been his safety net, his crutch. Every time something went wrong, I was the one who picked up the pieces. Whether it was helping him financially, solving his problems, or just being there when everything else seemed to fall apart, I was always the one to step in. That was the role I had been playing for years, without question. I had sacrificed my own peace, my own dreams, just to ensure that Mark had what he needed. I never once stopped to ask myself whether I was doing it for him or for me. I never questioned whether I was enabling him to continue his destructive behaviors. But once I made the decision to stop stepping in and fix everything for him, something changed, not just in Mark, but in me as well. I started to see the weight of my own choices, the way I had always placed my own needs on the back burner, convinced that my role in the family was to be the helper, the fixer, the one who always came to the rescue. But that wasn't sustainable. I couldn't keep living like that. And deep down, I knew it. As I watched Mark navigate his recovery, I began to see him for who he really was. A grown man with his own struggles, his own journey. Yes, it was painful to watch him stumble, but it was also empowering for me to let go. It was like watching someone finally stand on their own 2 feet for the first time, and though it wasn't always pretty, it was necessary. Mark needed to figure things out on his own. I couldn't be the one to solve every problem. That was something he needed to do for himself. And as he took small steps forward, I realized that I had been the one holding him back all along. By constantly stepping in to fix things, I had robbed him of the chance to grow. The more I let go, the more he began to take responsibility for his actions. He made mistakes, yes, but he also learned from them. And that, in itself, was the most important thing. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to be the one who saved everyone. I wasn't the family's crutch anymore. I wasn't the one who always had to step in and fix things. I was finally free of that burden. And as I watched Mark navigate his recovery, even with its ups and downs, I began to understand something important. I didn't need to be the hero anymore. The real hero was Mark, learning how to save himself. I wasn't perfect, and neither was he, but we were both moving forward. I realized that I didn't need to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe. The freedom that came with letting go was overwhelming in the best possible way. I could finally focus on my own life, my own well-being, and the things that mattered to me. It wasn't just about Mark's recovery anymore. It was about my own healing too. Letting go wasn't easy. It took time, and it took a lot of courage. But in the end, it was the best thing I could have done for both of us. Sometimes, the hardest thing you can do for someone is to let them figure things out on their own. And that's exactly what I did. It wasn't about abandoning him. It was about giving him the space to grow, just like I was finally giving myself the space to grow. And that, I believe, was the first step toward true healing for both of us. One of the most valuable lessons from this story is the importance of setting boundaries and understanding that sometimes the best way to help others is to let them face the consequences of their actions. Life often teaches us to be selfless and to care for others, especially in families. However, there comes a time when continually giving without receiving or being appreciated can lead to personal burnout and resentment. For many, especially as we age, it becomes essential to prioritize our own well-being and growth. This doesn't mean abandoning those we love, but rather allowing them to grow and take responsibility for their actions. By stepping back and setting healthy boundaries, we can give others the opportunity to mature, while also protecting our own peace and happiness. In the later stages of life, it's important to recognize that taking care of yourself is just as vital as caring for others. It's never too late to start asserting your needs and to realize that self-care is not selfish. It's necessary. This balance helps nurture healthier relationships and allows for more meaningful connections, as both parties are encouraged to grow and evolve independently. Ultimately, setting boundaries isn't about rejecting others, but about fostering respect and mutual care. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this intense family drama Reddit story, and it gave you some valuable insights into family dynamics. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and make sure to subscribe to Silent Wars for more family drama Reddit stories in the future. Your support helps us bring you even more amazing content. See you in the next video.